And welcome back. So now we're going to read chapter 4 of Ralph S. Mouse. Um, Before we begin, we'll read quick review of chapter 3, remembering that Ralph went to school. What are some things that happened? That's right. Ralph was sitting in the teacher's pocket, or in the teacher's pocket, in Ryan's pocket, and one of the schoolmates saw him. His teacher had him come to the front of the room with Ralph, and everybody got to adore Ralph. And the teacher decided to make an assignment, either write a poem or a story about Ralph or some kind of project. And Ryan's project was to make a maze. He said Ralph was a smart mouse and he could do anything, so this teacher challenged him to make a maze for Ralph. But do you remember how Ralph felt about doing that maze? Did he want to do a maze? Why do you think maybe he didn't want to do that maze? Hold on to that thought and see if you're right. As we left chapter 3, Ryan was heading home and Ralph was staying in the school. He was excited to ride his motorcycle, but Ryan took the motorcycle away from him. So now we are reading part 4. Life at school. Dusk began to fall in room 5, making the inside of Melissa's boot even darker when suddenly Ralph heard music. The lights were turned on and the man with a transistor radio fastened it to his belt came into the room and lifted the chairs onto the table. He began to sweep the wide room while the radio poured forth sad songs about lonely highways, broken hearts, and jail. The songs made Ralph feel gloomy as well as sulky. So if you're feeling gloomy and sulky, are you happy or are you sad? That's right, you're probably pretty sad. He began to feel sorry for himself. A long hall so perfect for a motorcycle riding, a dark and empty. His heart was broken over the loss of his motorcycle, and he might as well be in jail as this old. He might as well be in jail as in this old boot. When the man swept his way back to the back of the room, he unexpectedly set Melissa's boot upright, side by side, tumbling Ralph down to the foot where he sat trembling with nerves as self-pity until his ears told him the man had replaced the chairs on the floor, turned off the lights, and left. Because he was a mouse, Ralph found sleeping at night almost impossible. Without a grandfather clock to mark the hours, the night seemed endless. Why should I sit here in this smelly old jail of a boot when everyone is so mean to me? Ralph asked himself, and with the cruelty of the world as an excuse for breaking his promise to Ryan, he used his sharp claws to climb the boot lining. Quickly he leaped out and squeezed under the door of room 5. Nobody was going to stop him from exploring Irwin J. Sneed Elementary School. After a long and wistful look at the lonely highway of a hallway, Ralph found exploration more interesting and profitable than he expected. In room 4, he had discovered strange-looking pictures spread out on the floor beneath the blackboard. They were making gluey kind of stuff of seeds to heavy paper, and had left it on the floor to dry. Ralph made a nutritious meal of split pea, rice, and lentils before moving into another room where he found a jar of library paste. Delicious. Another room furnished with a long table, bench, were near the kitchen, where Ralph chewed into a bag of sugar and enjoyed the finest dessert. So here is Ralph eating paste, which is a type of glue they used to use back in the day. Instead of pouring out like the glue you do at school, it's kind of almost the consistency of stick glue, except they put it in a jar and you use like a popsicle stick to spread it out. All right. After his gourmet meal, Ralph had walked another rather than scampered down the hallway, that perfect place for hiding his motorcycle. If Ryan had not been so mean to a room with a carpet or bookshelves about the walls. That didn't make any sense. After the gourmet meal, Ralph walked rather than scampered down the hallway. That's a perfect place for hiding his motorcycle, if Ryan had not been so mean, to a room with a carpet and a bookshelf about the walls. A boring place for a mouse, Ralph decided, until he discovered something interesting on the bottom shelf behind a big desk. It turned out to be a book inside a bag made of 2 layers of brown paper. A tear in the outer layer revealed something unexpected in the lining. Now predict, what do you think might be inside that bag? Ralph could not believe the treasure that had been found. Between the layers of paper and already chewed mouse nest, Ralph pulled out some of the nest to examine its delicate texture. First quality, grade A mouse nest. So he found a mouse nest. He made a hole in the bag still larger, crawled inside, and curled up in the coziest bed he had ever known. Isn't it strange to find a mouse nest already made at school? Ralph intended to rest there while he plotted to get his motorcycle away from Ryan, but his full meal made him drowsy, and instead he fell asleep. Awaking to the sound of the school bus, he ran back to room 5 just in time as his former friend was hanging up his parka. Ralph ran up the leg of Ryan's jeans and into his shirt. "You give me my motorcycle," he demanded, trying to sound fierce. Ryan quickly faced the corner so no one could see Ralph. "Be quiet. You're not supposed to be here," he whispered. "Like I said, I'll give it to you after you run the maze." "Who says I'm going to run it?" Ralph was sullen about the whole affair. "I do," Ryan said. Ryan tried to speak without moving his lips. "If you want your motorcycle back." "Where is it?" Ralph wanted to know. "Right here." Ryan moved the motorcycle from his parka and placed it on one of his shirt pockets. "Now, go back to your boot." "Don't call it my boot," said Ralph. "It's dusty and smelly. Will you be quiet if I let you stay in my pocket?" "Sure." A shirt was warm and soft and had a good view of the classroom, if a hole was snipped in the pocket. As he dropped Ralph into the pocket, Ryan said, "Another thing, don't chew any more holes in my pockets. Mom didn't like it when she saw the hole in my new shirts I wore yesterday." "We'll see about that," thought Ralph, determined not to let the lub-dub of Ryan's heart lull him into sleep again until he figured out how to get the motorcycle back. After a better view of room 4, he bit a careful peephole with one thread down and one thread across into Ryan's pocket. Ralph watched with puzzled interest while the class worked with numbers and words. Late in the morning, the children formed a double line, something Ralph had never before witnessed, and walked quietly to the library where they selected books to read. "Why can't mice behave like that?" Ralph wondered. When Ryan found the book he wanted. He took a little red motorcycle out of his pocket and amused himself by running it back and forth across the table, softly going boom. The sound was enough to break the mouse's heart. The most interesting part of the day turned out to be late in the afternoon when the class worked on their projects for what the children called was the Great Mouse Exhibit. Miss Kay read a poem that Ralph found difficult to understand, something about wee skitlets, cowan trim, rouse beastie. While the class worked with crayons and paper, Ralph saw strange pictures of himself beginning to emerge. They were making him look very big, except for one boy who drew a cat that filled up the whole paper and then drew a tiny mouse down in one corner. Other boy and girl bent over their paper, writing, pausing, and gnawing on their pencils, writing again. Others behaved strangely, gnawing on their heads, tapping their pencils, and softly chanting tat tat ta-dum, 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 or ta-da-ta-dum, or ta-da-da-dum. The noises sounded something like an Indian war dance in old movies on TV, thought Ralph, puzzled. Ryan and Brad worked with glue and some old cartons on the table at the back of the room. They moved around so much that Ralph's peeve hole was so small he could not get a very clear idea of what they were building. Apparently, they did not have a clear idea themselves, for they argued about it, best way to make the partitions of the maze stand up about the height of the partition. We don't want him to be able to see over them, even if he stands on his hind legs, and the length and the number of blind alleys. Mostly they argued about the difficulty of the maze. Let's make it really hard, said Brad. Ralph decided he didn't like Brad with his tasseled hair, grubby t-shirt, and unfriendly ways. Not too hard, said Ryan. Aw, come on, said Brad. Making tunnels and trap doors will be fun. Real mazes aren't like that, and it wouldn't be fair, protested Ryan. He's just a little mouse. Besides, we haven't figured out how to make the partitions stand up. You're scared he can't do it, said Brad. Of course he can do it, Ryan said, at least loyal. But what if I can't do it? Ralph worried. What if I run around bumping my nose against the dead ends? Then how would Ryan feel after all of his bragging? A terrible thought occurred to Ralph. If he failed and everyone laughed, Ryan might not give him back his motorcycle after all. Ralph decided there was only one thing to do. Get up on the table at night and practice. He would memorize the maze so he could dash through the passage without bumping his nose even once. Do you think Ralph has a good idea? Would you do the same thing? Ralph had no sooner made his decision than the part of the maze must have fallen down, for Ryan said, "See, I told you it wouldn't work like that." Brad lost patience. "All right," he said, "since you're so smart, you can make your own dumb maze for your own dumb mouse. I'll write a poem instead." "You don't like to write poems," Ryan reminded him. "I'd rather write a poem than work on your dumb maze for your dumb mouse," he answered. His name should be Ralph D. Mouse. D for dumb. "Okay," said Ryan. "Suit yourself, but I don't see why you have to be so touchy all the time." Good, thought Ralph. Ryan will make it easy. Then the last bell rang. Ryan asked permission to work at the maze at home because he still hadn't figured out how to make the partition stand up. "Of course you may," Miss Kay told him, thereby destroying Ralph's plan to practice. "I hoped you and Brad might become friends if you work together." She raised her voice above a scramble She raised her voice above the scramble of the jackets and caps. Class, I have a surprise, she announced. Someone who writes a story for La Cucaracha Voice heard about our mouse exhibit and wants to write it up in the paper. She's going to come Friday afternoon and bring a photographer. Cucaracha, although it had grown since the gold rush days, was still a small town. News traveled fast. There was a buzz of excitement. Room 5 was going to have a picture in the newspaper. When Ryan plucked Ralph from his pocket, Ralph asked if he, in his tiniest voice, "Do I get a chance to practice running through that thing before Friday?" That would be cheating, Ryan thought, with stiff upper lip. That's the same as looking at test questions before a test. Just one little peek, coaxed Ralph. Nope. Ryan poked Ralph into Melissa's boot and ran off and dashed for the bus. Ralph crawled down around the bend of the toe of the boot, where he sat brooding in the dusk and the musky dark. What does that word brooding mean? I'll read that sentence again. Ralph crawled down around the bend to the toe of the boot, where he sat brooding in the dusky, musky dark. If you're brooding, you're kind of cross the arms, just thinking about what is wrong with you, what's going on, how people have wronged you. For the first time since he had left the inn, he began to wonder if anyone missed him in his old home. All right, so that is the end of chapter 4 for Ralph, and we will begin some more thinking about, will Ralph be able to complete that maze in time? What's going to happen with the newspaper? Do you think it's easy to make a maze? What's one way you could make a maze at home? That might be something kind of fun to do. I know last year in Clubhouse we made marble mazes, right? So think about how you can make a marble maze at home. Until our next chapter, bye.